Most subway stations in all cities of the world are quite similar, like fingers on a hand. These underground public transport facilities typically consist of a ticket office and escalator or stairs leading to the trains. Trains depart from platforms to the next station. Dispatchers are vigilantly watching over the system. But the similarity ends there because each station is individual and different from its neighboring stations in terms of design, depth, location and of course appearance. The architectural and artistic design of these underground space in particular helped these stations become a favorite for generations of residents and visitors to the big city lights. The Kyiv metro station, Ploshcha Lva Tolstogo, Lev Tolstoy Square, can be easily considered memorable. It is located under the square of the same name in the central historical part of the city, between the stations Maidan Nezalezhnosti and Olimpiyska, on the blue line of the metro at the crossing of Velika Vasilkivska and Lva Tolstogo streets. From here it is convenient to get to numerous museums, shops and restaurants. A 5-minute walk from it is the Bessarabka market and Krishadik Street. This is precisely why the station is very popular among tourists and has always been considered a traditional meeting place for Kyiv residents. The station itself is made in such a way as it was then written in the newspapers in the retro style. Indeed, its architecture has something in common with some classical forms of those stations that were built 20-30 years earlier. And the station was dedicated to the work of Lev Tolstoy. In particular, then in the newspapers it was said that the atmosphere of the first ball of Natasha Rostova was taken as the basis for the image of the station. The Ploshcha Lva Tolstogo station is one of the most beautiful on the entire blue metro line. It was built as an interchange to the Green Line, which at that time was still in the design stage. It was opened on December the 19th, 1981. By design, it is a 3-vaulted, deep-laying station built on pylons. One of its features is the expansive volume of the central hall. It really looks spacious and magnificent. It is 9.5 meters in diameter instead of the standard 8.5 and was built in order to accommodate the large passenger flow of the interchange hub, which was launched into operation 8 years after the official opening of the station. The station was created by the specialists of Kyiv Project. Vadim Zhazherin drafted the architectural design of the station. This was his first experience with the subway. When the station was being built, all the engineering had already been drafted. The upper lobby, which is located directly near the surface, was already designed. Then the engineers suddenly recalled that there should be an engineering building. And what is an engineering building? This is the place from where all subway lines are controlled. Do you understand? And at that time, we already had built a station below, and I worked on its design. And the above-ground surface was already developed. Moreover, it was necessary to make a decision in a matter of days. And it became clear that it was impossible here and there. So it was necessary to build something that would make it possible, somehow to put the structure in the right place. Today we are all familiar with the square named after Lev Tolstoy, but it was not always so. It used to be called Shulyavska, the name of Lva Tolstogo Street, more than a century ago, and Karavaevska after the famous Kyiv ophthalmologist who lived nearby. Only in the 1920s it became Tolstogo Street. At that time the writings of the humanist right were at the peak of their popularity, and also there's a version that Lev Tolstoy himself stayed here during his visit to Kyiv, in the house of his wife's sister Tatyana Berskuzminskaya. This woman, by the way, became the prototype of Natasha Rostova in the novel War and Peace. And although literary critics and historians still argue about this fact, For almost a century, this square in Kyiv bears the name of the great classic. Here, old stucco mansions attract the attention of passers-by. Until recently, the most interesting building on the square was the Michelson's People's Baths, or the Karavayev Baths. Now, on the site of the former baths, one of the first business centers in the capital rises over the square, and next to the old mansions, on the square, a brick building of the Metro Engineering Center grew. It is located directly above the metro station and creates a single original architectural complex. I believe that urban space should belong to people. People should not run along the sidewalks like rats along buildings. They must have a vast expanse of space and breathing room. At least this was my opinion. I mean maximizing the area of space for people, because a square is not a square if there are only sidewalks and cars driving around it. The square is a place where people should meet each other, where they can gather and find shelter from the pouring rain. So I decided to design and build such a massive loggia with a way out. This huge loggia partly compensates for the lack of territory on the square. Initially, it was assumed that it would be possible to get to the Ploshcha Tolstogo station from the Bessarabka quarter. But the idea remained only on paper. In reality, the underground space was filled with shops, so the only entrance to the station is located on the square of the same name. This is under the building where the single dispatch station, or the nucleus of the entire Kyiv metro station, is located today. The functioning of the capital's subway system used to be controlled from Khreshchatyk. The communications center was located above the central lobby of the station. The brain of the metro system, like human nerves, was connected to all underground facilities by hundreds of different cables. Electric pulses flowed through them at the speed of light. They came back informing dispatchers of the situation in a particular section of the route. Previously, each train dispatcher and each energy dispatcher had a huge mnemonic display, like the control panel of a nuclear power plant. There it was, exactly like that for every dispatcher. It was very interesting there to observe how trains move along the line, or how all these bulbs are illuminated, which indicate the operation of various substation installations at each station. Here there was such a huge layout. But times changed. Although the scoreboard is very interesting from the point of appearance, it is less convenient to use compared to ordinary computers. Now all this has been replaced by computers. All the train dispatchers are sitting in the same room, so it's more convenient for them, especially when the main dispatcher is nearby, as opposed to sitting in separate rooms. And those old mnemonic boards are now either only on photographs, or some remnants of them are today partially preserved in the Museum of the Polytechnic University. Today, dispatching covers all metro services. Centralized from a single center, it controls escalators, train traffic, ventilation, plumbing devices, voltage removal and supply, and much more, which an ordinary passenger on the subway will never guess or even try to imagine. All this is hidden from prying eyes. First of all, this is done especially to ensure the safety of passengers of the Kyiv metro. In order to meet the daily timetable of the movement of subway trains, we have various train schedules of different pairings for different passenger flows, both on weekends and on weekdays, on Fridays separately. In addition to that, there are separate rates for any additional events that are planned in the city, concerts or football matches, so the operating hours of the subway can be extended. So to ensure that this schedule is implemented and monitored, the main responsible person for this is the train dispatcher of the traffic service. He is the lord and master of the movement of trains. In addition to the traffic of trains, he gives his instructions to all those on duty at the stations. These are employees who are working on the platforms, and in accordance with these instructions, the train schedule is being executed. In addition, they give instructions to all drivers. The location of the engineering building of the subway was not chosen by chance. The fact is that in the area of Tolstogo Square, there's actually a point of intersection of all three active lines. so from here it was beneficial to lay communication lines and install special equipment. The brain of the Kyiv metro in a new place was launched into operation in the late 1980s. An inclined course, the escalator tunnel of the station, was actually built under existing buildings. The top from where the excavation started was all in an open pit, but the escalator tunnel was dug under the building. Well, this apartment building still stands behind the engineering building, and that is the reason that more sophisticated and stricter requirements were imposed on such construction, because if there are the slightest shifts of soils or the slightest mistake is made, the building will begin to sag, starting from just some unpleasant consequences, which means it would then take a long time to resolve the problem and could possibly end in some catastrophic situation. Right after the launch, the Tolstogo metro station became popular and beloved among the residents of Kyiv and guests of the city. It is called one of the most atmospheric subway stations in the capital, largely thanks to well-placed accents. White marble pylons, bronze-styled aluminum tape, red granite on the floor, and especially the lighting of the station halls creates a sense of harmony throughout the entire underground space of the Tolstogo metro station. The floor at the end of the central hall used to have a red lighting. Soft light streamed from behind the wrought iron grating and created bizarre patterns on the granite slabs. This was a kind of charm and even some kind of emphasis on the whole design of the underground space. And today, the final image of the station is complete, with massive brass lamps and light bulbs in the shape of candles. Everything here, as it were, is filled with the spirit of antiquity. The feeling is that you can just close your eyes and find yourself right at the very first ball of Natasha Rostova. And from around the corner, or maybe even from a train car, a real Pierre Bezukhov will enter the hall. The doors are closing. The next station is